Welcome to this Big Deception conference on our third year here. We are going to talk today about something really interesting. However, I must warn you about something that is of vital importance. Forget about preconceptions. If you don't leave your preconceptions aside, you are not going to understand what you could learn here. Why do I say this? Well, you're about to find out. We're going to present some archaeological discoveries that are being kept hidden from the public. And you're going to see things that are extremely interesting. What they want to hide from us. Findings of giants on Earth. What do we have here? This is a biblical text written many years ago, which talks about giants roaming the earth. Is this true, or is it a myth that someone made up and wrote it in the Bible? Let's find out. Extracted from this book by Jonathan Gray, we find this, which refers to a previous writing where there is a giant. And as you can see on the screen, with some amazing proportions, taller than 3.5 meters, and was being shown as a circus act. And as we can imagine, it finally ended up disappearing. See, he wasn't precisely short, 3.70 meters tall. But that's not all. Let's go to Monte Blanco Fossil Museum in Texas and look at what's here. Human remains from someone that was 4.57 meters tall. All these remains are well preserved and can be seen even today. Fossilized human footprint in granite rock. And this is in a forest in Cleveland, USA. It was discovered in February 2002. Simply by looking at the person whose foot is inside the fossil, we get an idea of the actual size. It measures almost 60 centimeters. And it belonged to someone that was approximately 4 meters tall. And here we have a fossilized shoe print in slate, which is in Antelope Springs, Utah. Official science says it is older than 500 million years. But there is a problem with that, because according to the evolution theory, humans weren't on the planet 500 million years ago. How could this be? Petrified human and dinosaur footprint in Laetoli, Tanzania. We were told that humans and dinosaurs didn't coexist. So how is this even possible? That we have petrified footprints of both together. And it's not the only one. Human and dinosaur petrified footprints found at the Patchouli River base in Glen Rose, Texas. And now let's go to this other museum of creation evidences. Sounds weird. Creation evidences? We have been taught evolution as something totally true. Well, look at what's in this museum. Even more unquestionable and surprising. Human and dinosaur footprints found in Texas. On top of that, the first footprint was that of the human, and immediately after the dinosaurs, as if they started running in different directions, one immediately after the other. Why? There are texts that indicate the reason behind all this. But let's look now at some surprising artifact findings. And funny enough, let's look at this text that it says that in the beginning of the world, there were people that worked with bronze and iron. Well, look at what's in this museum. Can you see something weird? Look, a hammer embedded in rock. How is this even possible? Well, here there's a description of the metal components, where it was founded, etc. So you can get a better look. This is no joke. This is totally real, and you can go and visit it. If we go to Klerksdorp Museum, what can we see here? a metallic sphere with grooves. Not sure you can see them around the middle of the sphere. It was found in South Africa, and according to the official science, the sphere is about 2,800 million years old. But there were no humans back then. Who made it? Or is it perhaps that the dating is not very accurate? Here we have more details, because apparently the sphere is totally empty inside. And now let's concentrate on this gentleman here, the amateur archaeologist Ron Wyatt. He died back in 1999, but we had the wonderful opportunity of interviewing his family, and it was an awesome experience. Let's analyze what Ron Wyatt discovered. But before we go into it, look, he also found giant human bones. Look at this one, for example, which is part of a right-hand thumb. And here we have more examples. They weren't particularly smart, were they? Noah's Ark. Do you know that a movie came out recently about Noah's Ark? Totally deceiving people from the truth. That's Hollywood, obviously. Well, this gentleman found Noah's Ark in Mountain Ararat. Is it a joke? The Bible mentions that Mountain Ararat in Turkey is where Noah's Ark ran aground after the flood. Is that simply a myth? Well, look at this and determine by yourself whether it's a myth. Let's start with what got him intrigued. In 1959, during a routine inspection of aerial photographs of Turkey, Captain Lihan Drupinar from the Turkish army found this formation in one of the photographs, taken from 1,920 meters of altitude. 17 years later, in 1977, Ron Wyatt visited the place after obtaining an official permit. Ron and others carried out a more in-depth investigation during several years, using metal detectors, underground radar scanners, lab tests, chemical analysis, etc. The findings were quite surprising. The evidence was unquestionable. In December 1986, after a research study by their own scientists, members from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Home Office, and investigators from Ataturk University got together and finally came to the conclusion that these were indeed the remains of Noah's Ark. As a recognition of his work, Ron was invited to the inauguration of the new national park as a guest of honor in June 20th, 1987. This building is still there in Turkey. In May 1989, the Visitor Center was opened. And you may wonder, is that true? Here you have the same photograph we used as the cover photo. Can you see it better now? When the so-called scientists got to that place, after taking some measurements, they said that it was a natural rock formation that coincided with the measurements written in the Bible regarding Noah's Ark, the length and the width. That is. However, it was a natural rock formation and nothing else. Those were all scientific studies that were done. Thank God that Ron Wyatt took it further. Look at this other photograph from a different perspective of Noah's Ark, totally petrified. But I have to say that the wood was quite different from today's wood. Here, another perspective, and how the outside walls collapsed, as you can see on the top picture. The different levels collapsed. And look at this now. Composition of the materials found in Noah's Ark. You can find out what it was made of. Even alloys. Alloys? Am I really saying alloys? When supposedly, at that time, humans used a loincloth and nothing else. And look at the fossilized ribs of Noah's Ark. Do you think this is a natural rock formation? And here we have something really interesting. the iron lines. All this color tape that you can see was put there following the Ron Wyatt's metal detector readings. It is obviously an iron structure, and yet another proof that the place holds the remains of a massive man-made structure, not by nature. And this is a petrified wood fragment from Noah's Ark, and also of a reddish color, just as Noah's Ark was described. And this also has a symbology that I'm not going to get into at this moment. Here we have alloy rivets from Noah's Ark. Is this possible? It is completely possible. Here we have lab analysis where we can see this is all true. The rivets were made out of aluminum and titanium. As you know, titanium is extremely hard, but aluminum cannot be found in nature. So then, what is this? Here is Ron Wyatt leaning against one of the anchors from the Ark. I suppose you may be surprised by those crosses engraved on the rock. That's due to the Templars who also visited the place, and they say that each cross symbolized Noah, his wife, and his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, with the 3 wives. But pay attention to this. If you still don't believe this is the Ark, here we have a 3D scanned photograph of the Ark's interior, donated by Ross Patterson from New Zealand, and from here I thank him very much. It was made by Anders Håbak Borgebakk of Norway. We share the same beliefs. Look especially at different compartments on a straight angle. Is this a natural rock formation? We're going to see now a presentation with live proofs. The analysis from a laboratory of the petrified laminated wood that belonged to Noah's Ark. Here it is, the lab test, where they talk about the composition. We have aluminum, titanium, iron. Is this a coincidence? Certified. But that's not all. Look, in the Wyatt Museum, which is in Tennessee, USA, you are going to see someone that looks very familiar to us. Angel, one of our collaborators, was there with the petrified wood. I'd like to ask Angel to come out and talk about it. He is a biologist. He's not someone totally unrelated. His work is precisely with wood. Please, Angel, tell us a bit more about it. Hi, my job is specifically analyzing wood, old wood. I'm obviously not a paleontologist or a paleogeologist, but by touching the material, its shape, its structure, the patterns on the cortex, the cut, it's obviously very interesting because it's a trunk. And on top of that, on different cuts, we have seen previously on the cross-section, we can see 3 lines of glued wood. You can't really see it now, but if you stop by our stand later, you will see that there are 3 totally straight and perfect lines of wood that had been glued by some really strong tree resin. From the analysis, it turns out this is some really strong tree resin that it totally bonds the wood, even far superior to the best glues we can find today. The first study from 1960 concluded that these samples weren't made out of wood, simply because they didn't have rings. So they said that it wasn't wood. However, In Noah's Ark times, we didn't have seasons like now. The weather was always the same. Trees grew like in the tropics, at a constant rate, without variations. Therefore, wood grew in a uniform manner. But the carbon tests show a bigger concentration of carbon than in the surrounding land. Therefore, it is petrified wood. Well, I think this is all I have to say. If you want more information, please stop by our stand and we can talk more in depth, because it is truly breathtaking. I thank Angel. As you can see, the information is first-hand. And now we're going to show another finding that many people claim is impossible: Sodom and Gomorrah. Have you all heard about Sodom and Gomorrah, right? There is a word that comes from one of these names, sodomy. Well, in the Bible, Sodom and Gomorrah were mentioned and are destroyed due to the big corruption that was in place. They were destroyed by fire and azufre that fell from heaven. And the Bible says that this really happened, even in the New Testament. We're going to see some images from the video Ark Discovery about archaeology in Gomorrah. Ark Discovery are our colleagues from Tennessee, from Wyatt's Museum that we mentioned earlier. Let's look at these photographs. The remains of Gomorrah city in Israel. This is not a mountain. It's a human construction, and its angles prove it. Look at it from different perspectives. And through these images, you will realize, can you see this doesn't create by itself? And look, even a pyramid with a ziggurat shape. How is this possible? Were there pyramids in Israel? And that ziggurat shape shows that it was pagan adoration from that time that has extended to the whole world through all cultures. This is how it must have been originally. Very similar in a smaller scale to the Tower of Babel, with a temple included, and even remains of a sphinx in Gomorrah. Does it remind you of Egypt? That's right. Here it is. This isn't self-made. Look at it from different perspectives. Doesn't it remind you of the Sphinx with the famous lion? And look, here we have some drops of the azufre rain that fell over Sodom and Gomorrah. Was it true what the biblical text said? Well, you are in for a surprise. Look at these other images. And not only that, here is Ron Wyatt showing some of these drops that fell, but we're not going to conform just by looking at it. Here you can see one of these azufre samples up close. But now we're going to show you one of these samples so that you can actually touch it if you want, which has some odd characteristics. As you know, azufre around the world, it has a natural composition of about 40% azufre. Well, in that place, the azufre has a 98.4% of purity. This is a lab test. I'm not making it up. And that's not all. Here we have one of those azufre drops. I've cut it. You can actually touch it if you want. But I must warn you to wash your hands thoroughly afterwards, because it is very potent and it also has a very strong smell. Later, if you want, you can stop by our stand and hold it in your hands and look at this. Another one of these droplets extracted from Sodom and Gomorrah and surrounding cities, extracted and placed here for all of you to see. This has been lent by Ron Wyatt's museum, so you have proof. And now we can say this really took place. Have you ever seen anything like this on TV? Not really, right? And now we're going to look at some more findings made by Ron Wyatt at the Red Sea. Do you know that famous movie, The Ten Commandments, with Charlton Heston? The sea opens, they crossed, and after, It closes over the Pharaoh's chariots. You think that's just an invention on the Bible? Really? The biblical text says that it took place. I'm not going to read it to move on. We don't have much time. But you can find it all here. This was the exodus of the Hebrews from Egypt to Mountain Sinai, specifically through this route that you can see in red. And when they had to cross the Gulf of Aqaba, they had to cross the sea. How were 6 million people plus all the cattle going to cross? The Pharaoh chariots behind. And what was going to happen? This is the exact place surrounded by mountains. They arrived here, and there was no escape. This is the place through which they crossed the Red Sea. A massive beach where all those people and the cattle fitted. And this is a 3D model where we find the place with a natural bridge that enabled them to cross. As you can see, abyss on either side. Precisely there is where they crossed. More proofs back in this app. Look at where it's extracted from. More details. And here we have wheels from the Pharaoh chariots that are still there. They are still there. Here you have the comparison of the wheel spokes, which also coincide with the ones found in Tutankhamun's tomb. Here we have another wheel covered by coral. The wheels. Have you ever seen this on TV? They'll probably never show it. Well, Ron Wyatt found it. He was interviewed by some TV channels. Look how it coincides with the shape of Pharaoh Thutmosis IV chariots. And what else was discovered down there? Human bones at the place of the Red Sea crossing, precisely there. And if that wasn't enough, horse paws, the ones pulling the chariots, they were also found there. They have shrunk to 70% of their original size due to being under the sea, but the proofs are there. And this is a pillar also found by Ron Wyatt, and it seems King Solomon put up to mark the place where they crossed. And people say it's all a myth. Well, here you have it. And the rock in Horeb, a place where the Bible says water poured out, where there was none. Enough water for all of them to drink. And here you have it, the parted rock in different photographs. In all the conferences we've had, you can see the erosion from the water. Where did all that water come from? The biblical text said it. And Mountain Sinai, where in the movie the Ten Commandments are given to Moses, and that the Catholic Church says it's somewhere else. Well, it isn't somewhere else. It is in a place that now belongs to Saudi Arabia. And look at what happened precisely on that summit, where the Bible says the Ten Commandments were given to Moses. Is carbonized. The Bible says God descended there with blazing fire. This is not burned with matches. This is rock, basalt, among other minerals. Here is the angel again in the Wyatt Museum, and he's going to explain what he held in his hands. Well, obviously this isn't wood, therefore there isn't that much I can explain, but the museum director told me that this was a rock sample from Mountain Sinai's summit. And yes, some of the rocks were basalt, but there were also other rocks that were black on the outside, but when cracked, the inside was white or light gray. So the exterior was carbonized, but not the interior. Therefore, they weren't black rocks, but rather carbonized rocks. Well, thank you. He also had them in his hands. And here the Bible says that a pulpit was erected to worship a golden calf. Well, look at the place. It's still there. It is enclosed, so no one can get in there, because Saudi Arabia doesn't allow anyone in there. Why do you think that is? Well, they're Muslims. If they accepted this, they will have to accept many other things that aren't in their interests. Look, there's even a petroglyph of the golden calf on the pulpit surroundings, where they made their prayers and sacrifices. And also, old Hebrew inscriptions have been discovered in the Sinai desert. Here we have more. Can you see the upper right corner image? Is a 7-arm candelabrum carved on the rock, a petroglyph. And yet another petroglyph. This was discovered by Mr. Kim, a Korean who also works proving the same sort of things as we do. He was there and found it. But Ron Wyatt also found the Ark of the Covenant. You know, the famous Ark Indiana Jones was after, in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Well, funny enough, was on the same year, and funny enough, was a completely different place that Hollywood portrayed. Here you have the explanation of what the Ark was made of, what it was used for, who could touch the Ark. They were Levites, the priests among the 12 tribes of Israel. And after analyzing all the biblical text, the mention where the ark was placed, it was placed in Solomon's temple in Jerusalem, until the Babylonian army sieged Jerusalem. They even destroyed the temple, but they didn't take the ark because they couldn't find it. The Ark of the Covenant wasn't there anymore. The Bible says that someone took it and hid it. This is the illustration of the Ark of the Covenant. Here we have it. According to Ron Wyatt's description. And do you know where it is? Here you have it. He is digging at the base of Mountain Golgotha, or the Calvary in Jerusalem, outside the walls. We're going to see different images of the tunnels he excavated with permission from Israel's government, although after they didn't even want to admit they knew Ron Wyatt. He had to show proofs that it wasn't true. The holes he was digging in order to make it through, and he was guided by the biblical texts to find where the Ark of the Covenant was, among other things you will find in the conferences. And this is an ivory grenade that belonged to the first temple of Jerusalem, found by Ron in Zedekiah's cave, which is one that led him to the Ark of the Covenant. This is one of the proofs he had to show, because they were saying they didn't even know Ron Wyatt, that they hadn't given him permission, and so on. Dan Bahat, he was antique director in Jerusalem, and here is Ron giving him some of the artifacts he discovered, precisely there. And what else did Ron Wyatt find there? Okay, I must tell you something before we go into detail. Ron Wyatt didn't actually extract the ark. He couldn't get it out. Someone told him that it couldn't be done, but the ark will come out in a short time. All this information can be found on our official website. Everything is explained there in detail. And you will understand why Israel government is hiding this finding, among others. Here we have Golgotha Mountain, also called Skull Mountain. Look at these cavities. Do you understand why it's called Skull Mountain? For the Catholic tradition, Skull Mountain, where Jesus was crucified, is somewhere else. They were wrong, like with many other things. This is the real Skull Mountain. And what's there exactly? Here he is with one of his sons, digging at the place where Jesus was crucified. And you know what he found there? This is the stone placed over the square hole carved on the rock. It measures 60 centimeters deep. There were 3 holes. Can you remember the biblical text? It says that Jesus was in the middle and 1 thief at either side. The holes were discovered, and this rock was covering the hole. You know, when the cross was going to be erected, it was dragged until it suddenly dropped in those 60 centimeters. Imagine that, while being crucified. Absolutely terrifying. And here is Ron Wyatt holding the rock that covered that hole. It's the same that you see there. And this is a reconstruction of the true ubication where Christ was crucified. And look at what's underneath. Can you see something? The Ark of the Covenant is placed exactly 6 meters in depth, under the exact spot where Jesus was crucified. And something spilled over it. Jesus' blood. The Bible says there was an earthquake right when he was crucified, and the rocks were cracked. And do you remember that a Roman soldier speared his right side and water and blood poured out? Well, when the earthquake happened, all that water and blood poured through the cracks on the rock, and it landed precisely on the mercy seat, where the biblical text says God appeared. Well, look here. Well, look, here's Marnell. Marnell is Ron Wyatt's widow. She remarried a couple of years ago, and she said that the blood remains were in good custody because Ron Wyatt managed to extract a sample of that blood, and it was analyzed in a lab. They are still in custody nowadays, and she says that they will see the light with the analysis and all. Ella misma dice que en un próximo tiempo se van a mostrar a la luz pública con el análisis y todo. All Ron Wyatt findings have been declared truthful, apart from official science that doesn't want to talk about it or tries to bury it. Now we're going to see a video. It's only 4 minutes long, with Ron Wyatt's declarations. It's in English, but with Spanish subtitles, for you to see his testimony about the analysis that was performed on the remains of Jesus' blood that is going to leave you speechless. Let's watch it.
Thank you very much for all 3 for seminars. Wonderful, thank you. My question is that you said that you had the blood of our Lord examined by the Israelis.
That's correct.
What was the determination of that?
Okay. Now, we won't be able to take second questions. I'm sorry if you're on your second one, please just step out. I love you, but we're running out of time. Real quickly, okay. Dried blood is dead blood. Everybody knows that, all right? They can test the blood of the pharaohs, the mummies and the pharaohs, all right? There's certain things they can do. They cannot get a chromosome count by any method I'm familiar with, all right? Things keep changing. I don't profess to know everything. However, there's no way I know that you can get a chromosome count out of dead blood. You can get a DNA and some other things, but not a chromosome count, all right? That's done by living white blood cells. Now then, first of all, in this analysis, I took the blood into a laboratory in Israel. I asked one of the people I work with in antiquities, where is a good laboratory that does reliable work? And they said such and such, such and such. I took it. I just said, please examine this blood and tell me what you can tell me about it. All right? They said, well, look, we're going to reconstitute it. We're going to put it in normal saline and keep it at body temperature for 72 hours with gentle swirling. All right? That's their business. That's great. I said, now I want to be there when you check it out. They said, fine. So I was back. They checked it out. I said, now, they said it's human blood. We can tell that. They did whatever tests they need to do. And then I said, take some of the white blood cells and put them in a growth medium and keep them at body temperature for 48 hours. And they said, well, that'll do no good because it's dead blood. I said, would you please do that for me? And they said, okay, we'll do it. So anyway, I said, I want to be there when you take it out and examine it. So I was back there. They took it out, examined it under a microscope, and the one technician called the other one over there, and then they called the boss over there, and they were talking Hebrew a mile a minute there for a little bit, and they looked at me and they said, Mr. Wyatt, this human blood only has 24 chromosomes in it. Everybody else has 46. You see, 23 from your mother, 23 from your father, 22 autosomes from your mother, 22 autosomes from your father. You get an X from your mother, you may get an X or a Y from your father, all right? This blood had 23 chromosomes from the mother's side, one Y chromosome only. You see, the child could not have developed if they hadn't had the autosomes from the mother. So all of his physical characteristics were determined by his mother's side of the family, her autosomes. His maleness was determined by this one Y that came from the source, not a human male. Then they said, this blood is alive. And then they said, whose blood is this? I said, it's the blood of your Messiah. And I assure you, those men's lives have changed. You're welcome.
Bien.
This personal testimony was given for a very special reason. Ron knew exactly what he was talking about. Ron Wyatt was an anesthetist. He knew very well all about chromosomes. How once the blood is dry, there is nothing you can do. But someone told Ron what he had to do for that blood to be analyzed. If you want to know who told him that and what other conclusions he came to regarding this matter, I recommend you go to the official web of El Gran Engaño. You're going to see everything I've said here, but with all details. But Ron found something else in Jesus' tomb. Don't believe that Jesus' tomb is what the Catholic Church is saying, where precisely the Pope went this previous week in Holy Land. This is the real tomb. The Garden Tomb, as it is known, very close to Golgotha Mountain, just a few meters away. Do you know that for them Sabbath, Saturday, is rest day, and couldn't do any labor that day? Therefore the burial had to be done very quickly, because the sun was about to set on Friday, and Saturday began. And this tomb wasn't meant for him. It was for Joseph of Arimathea, a rich man. Here you can see it in detail. The groove you can see on the ground is where they rolled a massive stone, similar to that of a windmill. And with that stone, they sealed the entrance with some iron bars. They have also been analyzed. And here is where Jesus Christ's body was placed, inside the tomb. Jesus Christ's body was placed here, and they have even discovered how they had to quickly chop the stone in order to make the tomb longer, due to Jesus being taller than Joseph of Arimathea. They gave him his tomb. I also recommend you go to this website, discoverynews.net. We have at our stand the publication that Ron Wyatt made before he passed away, so that everybody could know about his findings with many proofs. You know, there is an interview with Ron Wyatt right before his death. We were able to broadcast it. His testimony is breathtaking. When even before his death, he keeps reassuring that everything he found and brought out is true, regardless of what has been said about him. Here you have this article summarized with some of what you have seen here today. It is scientifically proven by science that right before death, minutes, hours, when you see death up close, there is a tendency to the truth. There is no way that the person who is about to die lies. And that is a proven fact. I don't remember the name of that particular science. I believe it's something related to agony, and it studies that moment previous to dying. So it is very interesting, because when you watch the interview, he was really suffering from that cancer, to the point where he struggled to even catch air in order to speak. And to the very last moment, he confirms everything, because they asked the same questions and he gave the same answers, which can only mean he was there, saw and touched what he claims. Well, that's how it is. To be honest, when you watch the interview, it gives you goosebumps, because everything we've seen is true. And this makes us wonder, if all those biblical texts are correct, why are they trying to demystify the Bible, saying that it's all a myth? They are only teachings and that it never took place. I dare anyone to prove that everything we've showed today is not true. I have to thank the Wyatt family and their collaborators very, very much. And also the author of this book, The Art of the Pact, by George Fleffel Beza, where he gives some impressive details. He was also with Ron Wyatt's widow. He interviewed her and gave some very interesting details. And also big thanks to Richard Reeves, president of Wyatt's Archaeological Investigation and conservatist at the Archaeological Museum, Wyatt. And all this is going to be very helpful for something. We've seen how Sodom and Gomorrah ended, right? Well, that's going to be the link with tomorrow's conference. And I'm only going to read one biblical text. As you can see, I haven't even read a biblical text besides. We didn't have much time. I told you this conference must be observed without any preconceived ideas, because otherwise we're not going to understand anything. Matthew 24 from 37 to 39, and Jesus' words. And he says, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. What's this? Jesus was talking about his return, his second coming. As you know, the Bible is full of prophecies that not only talked about past events, but also about things nowadays that we are demonstrating weekly in our conferences. Well, Jesus even said he was coming back. And you know what's going to happen then? Look at how he described his second coming, among other things. For in those days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man, at a time of corruption, just like the antediluvians lived. Tomorrow at 5, we're going to talk about this theme, the date of the end of the world. Is there really a date for the end of the world? So many people have talked about it, the Mayas and others. Well, tomorrow we're going to see some biblical texts that clearly say that there is a date, and not only that, it also explains what's going to happen when it's revealed. Tomorrow we are gonna analyze those texts about what's going to take place in those times. I can only tell you one thing. There are only a few years left. We will continue tomorrow at 5. Thank you very much. Welcome to this Big Deception conference on